Hello, everybody. Happy full moon, eclipse, Mercury cazimi, oppositions, squares, you name it, we freaking got it this week. So there is so much going on in the sky. We've been talking about it a lot. We've been dissecting Mars, we've been dissecting eclipses, but now today is the actual lunar eclipse, full moon in Taurus. And it's been a buildup, it's been a thing. Because before that, we had the Scorpio eclipse. So we were shedding, we were gutting, we were cleaning out, we were moving energy. And now we're faced with this mess, kind of. We're faced with this opposition of, on one end, we've got Scorpio energy, and Venus is there in her detriment, so she's a little uncomfortable. And Venus rules Taurus, where the moon is right now, so it's a little uncomfortable. Imagine these oppositions, how it's conflicting energy. That's what we're dealing with right now, because we've made this mess, we've made this spiritual mess of ourselves, and now it's, how is the cleanup gonna work? What are we actually going to do? And Taurus is very foundational in that way. But what we have going on right this very minute is a Mercury cazimi, which means Mercury that rules our thoughts is all of a sudden, boom, blown up by the sun. And so imagine everything is illuminated. Imagine the pockets of yourself that you couldn't see before. And then all of a sudden you do like a meditation or a grounding exercise, or you go back to places inside yourself that were previously not accessible and see it different through your intellect. So that's what we have going on right now. And that's not all. That's not all, folks. We've got loads of other things going on. But what I want to talk about for a minute is Venus, because Venus is being deeply impacted right now, which also means our relationships, our feminism, our deep divine is being triggered right now. It's interesting because I've been reading really feminine, times where women were oppressed books. I just finished Hester, which is about the Scarlet Letter, the author who wrote the Scarlet Letter. And I just found such good juice in how, you guys, we used to not even be able to vote. What? We used to have no choice over what was happening to us. And now here we are, it's election day. Perfect, right, for a full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus, because I like to think of, Libra is also ruled by Venus. So I see Libra as divine feminine energy. They play nicely together. Taurus is like the masculine feminine, and how we're balancing those things, because Taurus energy is the first fixed sign in the zodiac. It's the first earth element in the zodiac. It's about, instead of partnerships, because partnerships, relationships, parentships, all of the ways in which you're relating to people might feel a little strained right now, might feel confusing, might feel inexplicably inaccessible. And there's a reason for that. Venus opposing its planet that it rules is going to bring those things up. And then having this Mercury cazimi is going to blow our thoughts up. And so where I go to when I think of this energy is I go to self-love. Taurus is a beautiful sign of self-love. Libra is more about the partnership love, but Taurus is about self-love and safety. How are you building your home? How are you building your diet? How are you building your finances? It's like a building energy. It's earthy, it's grounded, and it needs safety. Okay, and we haven't had a lot of safety lately. There are housing crises, there are shortage crises, there's elections going on. Every part of how we feel grounded is up for grabs right now. And so it's that feeling of, okay, we've gutted the closet, and now how are we going to put it back in a way that makes sense? And it's a very simple answer to a very complex situation that is going on right now. And it really falls into, how are we loving ourselves right now? How are we seeing ourselves right now? How are we sticking up for ourselves right now? Elections are great juice. Feminism is great juice. How are we in this society creating the world we want to live in? Well, it starts with ourselves, always, forever ourselves. And it's been challenged this last eclipse season, because Venus being in her detriment in Scorpio doesn't know what she wants. There's this feeling of mistrust, of misholding of what all is happening in the cosmos. And it can bring up fear, and it can bring up confusion, and it can bring up secrets and all of the things that we're holding, not just for ourselves, but holding for the collective, holding for our family, holding for our relationships. How many secrets do you have in your trunk? You know, sometimes when the trunk gets blown wide open and you start feeling into all of the collective trauma, the self-trauma, the relational trauma of what it is to be human in this world right now, can feel extremely ungrounding. But here is this Taurus eclipse, and it is like, who are you now that you don't have the same footing that you had before? Who do you want to be now that you can have some reinvention opportunity? It can feel really confusing, but if you're gonna look outside for validation, you're gonna be met with, here's the other thing that's going on astrologically. Here are our oppositions. Mercury Cazimi is doing its thing. And then both of these energies, okay, because they're opposite oppositions, are coming in the sky to square Saturn. Woo! That's a lot of energy, okay? You have Uranus wanting to make big changes up in this eclipse. You have Venus fearful and in a state of unease here in its detriment with the Scorpio energy. And then it's all squaring this big life lesson of Saturn. Usually Saturn can be really harsh. It can feel unwelcome, unwanted, a hard lesson, the things we have to get over. And like, listen, everything's hard right now. Everything, you know? There's no proverbial yellow brick road for us to follow right now. There's no follow. That's not like a thing right now at all. And all of the mystical things that we're being met up against are scarier in nature. Is the apple poison or not? I'm hungry. Should I take the bite or not? And it's, what are you hungry for right now? And what is holding you back? What's the fear space that Scorpio's bringing up? And then here comes the Taurus energy. How are we building ourselves back up? How are we finding our answers in ourselves? Squaring Saturn are big life lessons. So to me, Saturn is really helping. To me, Saturn's coming in and being like, okay, children, form a line. Let's have a line of our issues. Here is the airing of grievances. How are we gonna sort this? You know, think of your body and your mind and your soul as a conglomerate meeting at the same time. And I want you guys to do this today. Have a safety briefing. All come together and say, what doesn't feel safe here? What doesn't feel safe here? What doesn't feel safe here? And how are we going to rebuild it in a way that honors us first, more than everything else we have spread across our plate, and most likely spread too thin? And this is the problem when we've been in a cycle of struggle for such a long time, is that eventually we're just like peanut butter, spread way too thin. What are we gonna do about that? Well, we're gonna add some jelly, and I'm gonna tell you what the jelly is. The jelly is the mixture that we as individuals have to add flavor to our spread too thin peanut butter. You know, some sweetness, because Venus needs that right now. Some texture, because freaking Taurus needs that right now. All of this energy, and here comes Saturn saying, okay, guys, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? It's okay to feel confused and fearful, but Mercury Cazimi on this eclipse full moon is asking us, because the moon is illuminated and the sun now is bright, illuminating our thoughts. Mercury is illuminated. So how are we going to take our thoughts and our feelings and our body, and how are we going to find an agreement where we're honoring ourselves? We're honoring the changes that have happened in this last period of time. I think the problem is that so much has changed, and now we're butting up against this wall of same versus different. How do we want to be different versus how do we want to be the same person we've always known ourselves to be? It's a very confusing time, and that's true. But I really appreciate this Saturn square because it's here to create tension in a good way. Squares are tension, and sometimes tension can feel really hard, but sometimes it can feel productive. It's the difference between when you're in pain for no reason versus when you're in labor pain or your bone is healing pain. There's productive pain happening so that we can heal it better, righter, in a way that makes more sense. Because right now, I think we've been going through a period of time where a lot hasn't made sense, where we've lost a lot, where all of a sudden our connections aren't what they used to be. Our friendships, our partnerships, our kids, our everything has shifted in a way that spiritually we haven't quite caught up to yet. And so here is this big eclipse, and gosh, haven't we had enough? Haven't we had enough? But never enough, never, because we are in this life to be learning, to be opening, to be the egg that continues to get cracked open, because inside are things that we never could have imagined about ourselves. We're so much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. But the problem is, and this is where Mercury comes in, is that we let the outside resources break us down a little bit. That if we've had a lot of negative feedback or rejection or no's lately, it feels discouraging. But Mercury is here to illuminate the fact that these thoughts aren't real. Our thoughts are actually the stimuli that's going on around us that is leading us to conclusions that don't necessarily correlate to what it is we need, want, experience on the inside. And once we can honestly imagine a world in which our thoughts don't rule us, that's where the opportunity is in this eclipse season. That's where it's really time to find ourselves in a completely different way, because Saturn is here to give us a lesson in what our next steps are. So to me, it's this divine, wild trust that whatever's falling away right now, whatever we're gripping so tightly onto right now, to let it go, to just let it go. Who are we without our attachments? What if your house burnt down tomorrow? What if the dearest thing you can possibly think gets taken from you tomorrow? Who are you on the other end of loss? Who are you on the other end of things not working out? We talk so much about the fairy tales of the happily ever afters, but there is such a thing as after happily ever after. And what do we do when our proverbial cards have been laid out and they didn't go the way we thought? What if you thought you married the love of your life and then you got divorced? Okay, that's not happily ever after, is it? Is it? Sure it is. Sure it is. Because the thing is that happily ever after is super based on attachment thinking, on the notion that there is such a thing as happily ever after, on the notion that there is such a thing that we have control over the things that are and are not going to happen to us. This is a fallacy. This isn't true. There is no control over the events of our lives. There is pivoting. There is setting ourselves up for success. There is having a positive mindset. But at the end of the day, you can go into something. And the beautiful part about living this life is that it's never going to be exactly how you imagine it to be, because life is surprising. Because that is why we're here, to be surprised, both positive and negative, by what life has to give to us. And the real juice here is how we take life's surprises and use it as fuel for our thoughts instead of it being a poison to our thoughts, then poisoning the rest of us. It's all just information. Uranus begs us to do it different right now. Uranus is asking, what is the routine that you are enmeshed in that is totally and completely poisoning the well of your goodness and your well-being? Because it's very important that we start to see ourselves as very important. Because the problem with what is going on right now is we are all filling from empty wells. It's dirt water now, guys. We're giving each other dirt water. And do you want dirt water? No, you do not. Neither do I. I want you to be healthy so that you are pouring from your full well, and I want me to be healthy. So in order to get you healthy, I have to be the example and get me healthy. And that's how all of us need to start aligning. Taurus so very much is about self-care. Taurus is so very much is about how we are taking care of ourselves, because the sign that comes before that is Aries, and that is a very central, self-centered, not in a bad way, in a good way, self-centered energy. So then we're coming into Taurus and we're falling in love with ourselves. That's the point. There is a cyclical notion of how the signs are being progressed, okay? And Aries is about the self. You're born, and they're like, Aries is number one, okay? It's how we start identifying ourselves. And then Taurus is about how we are loving ourselves, because it's ruled by Venus, the planet of love. And so often we think that self-love is selfish. And the truth is, not having self-love is selfish, because then we're all just a bunch of freaking martyrs doing all of these things for other people that nobody is seeing as important because they're doing it too. And so we're all just eking by and giving to each other without giving to ourselves. And now we're all mirroring the exhaustion of what that looks like. We're all exhausted. We don't have anything else to give. What we need to be giving is rest to ourselves, comfort, safety, these things. Have you heard a lot of no's, rejections, things not feeling right? When those things happen, it's time to go really deep into ourselves and see what we can find with this Mercury cazimi turning the light on and Saturn bringing us enough tension to be able to see where the problem is. You know, get righteous with yourself. Where is the problem in your life? What's the biggest one? What's the smallest one? How are those two similar? How are they dissimilar? It's time to start a laundry list of questions to ask ourselves, how is our day-to-day life impacting us? What are we doing to help ourselves or hinder ourselves? How are our relationships helping ourselves or hindering ourselves? It's time to really start thinking about that. How is the world climate hindering our growth? These are all really big questions that you don't need to find the answers to today, but it is a self-empowerment to ask you to really sit with yourself. Close your eyes and find the parts in yourself that don't feel right anymore. What parts of yourself have you outgrown? And how do you bless it, thank it, and let it go? My kids were just watching In and Out last night, and I love it so much. It's such a beautiful movie because it highlights that moment when you're letting go of your inner, imaginary life, that there are parts of becoming an adult that really hurt. And so look to your kids and see where they're having to step up in a way that might be really painful for them too right now, because it's a big change in the universe right now. And what do we need to let go of in order to get to the next level? We all have our whoobies. We all have our thought processes. We all have our routines that we think keep us safe. But when we outgrow them, then we start to get really malazed by the things that used to comfort us, And how do we look at it differently? And that's what Uranus up here, hanging out with this lunar eclipse, wants us to look at. How can we change? It's time. Aren't you tired of same? Don't you want something new and bold to latch onto? And this can feel very uncomfortable, but if you always put it in terms of self-love, then there's always a solution. Always, always. And look at the card I pulled. It's such a lovely card. Fill our own cups with whatever you like. I mean, there's a motherfucking dragon, there's a rainbow, there's some stars, there's a crown, you name it. These cups have it, okay? It is wish fulfillment, but there's only one person who can fulfill that wish, and it's you. You are the wizard of these motherfucking cups. Here they are. Let's go, witches and warlocks. Let's get into it, And while we're on the subject of witches and warlocks, witches in history were burned at the stake. Can you imagine the cruelty and, excuse me saying, Venus being in her detriment, the fear of divine feminine, that these women who were powerful, who were healers, who were gifted, who had things to share with their community, were then persecuted because they were women. Because that power, because this beautiful mysticism that we all have inside of ourselves, and you can put whatever tagline you want on it, God or Buddha or whatever your fill in the blank of religious thinking is, we have that divine inside of all of us. And to call it witchcraft is a fallacy. To call ourselves something other than what we are is a fallacy. And that's where this self-love comes in. Don't burn the witches. Enhance the witch inside of you, because what that means is that those people were gifted. They had something to give that others were threatened by. And it is the lowest form of evil. It's the lowest form of insecurity. It's the lack of self-love that person who's seeing this other person reflected in themselves makes them want to do something mean or cruel or harmful. That's what this whole season is about right now. There's no need to focus on anybody else's politics, anybody else's religion, anybody else's dress wear. Who gives a shit? It has nothing to do with you. You are your own keeper. You have a beautiful mysticism inside of you. You are your deepest, most original form of resource. And until we get that, until we start operating from an empowered place, we're going to try to disempower other people. We're going to disempower ourselves, and in so doing, we'll be triggered by those who are empowered. We don't want to be basic this way. This is basic levels of thinking. We are so much more evolved than that. So to see this card, it's an empowerment card. It's a self-love card. It's a manifesting card. All of this hardship, all of this pain, all of these things we are going through are completely within our power to shift, because it's about mindset, it's about heart set, and it's about soul set. How are we setting ourselves up right now for success? How are we taking the no's? What if a no was really What if a no was really an opening of a different window that we didn't see before? What if a job loss is the opportunity to find a better job? What if a divorce is a better opportunity to find someone who will love us better? What if a loss of a friendship is an opportunity to see ourselves differently, to love ourselves for a while so that then someone else can mirror that self-love that you've worked on and open the possibility of a new connection that's healthier, better, more suited towards how you've changed? Because the truth is, we're changing. I read a book the other day and the last line was, "I'll love you forever as long as you never change." And I'm like, bull crap. That is bull crap limited thinking, because nobody's ever been more themselves than I am. I am a very myself person. I have been since I was a wee little person. But the truth is that I've changed a lot. And there are some people in all of our lives who witness that change and either feel joy or threat from it. And that's not our problem. Our main goal right now is to love ourselves. And however you're not loving yourself right now, that's what's getting triggered by this eclipse and by Venus being in her detriment over here with the solar eclipse we just had. How are you not loving yourself? What do you hate about yourself? And how do we shift the narrative? Because once we can do that, then we know how to pour from a very different place inside of ourselves. And that place is endless. That place has unlimited resource to manifest what it is you truly want. The truth is, we just think we want things that we don't want. We think we want money, recognition, love, but we don't want those things in the way that makes more sense, in the realistic way. We want the happily ever after. And I'm here to tell you, we're over the rainbow. We're done with the yellow brick road. Here we are in the reality of the fact that happily ever after is just a concept. We never arrive. We're always traveling. The second you think you've arrived is the very moment you are going to get knocked off your pedestal, because life is a walking journey. There are breaks, there are joys, there are beautiful swims to have along the way, but it's so important to understand that our work is never done. And the work will always, forevermore, begin with ourselves. And so I release you into this great universe of all of these squares and oppositions and crap and bullshit going on. And I ask you, and I ask me, how can I love myself through this time in my life? And how will that self-love cultivate the very thing that has felt out of my reach for the forever times? It's all an inside job, guys. Easy, right? It's the hardest thing in the world, but good luck with it. And really try to dig in with yourself and see where even the hardships can be the good ships too. Even the good ships can be the hard ships too, that there is no black and white when it comes to happiness, that happiness is shaded, that happiness has so many different levels, and we acquire happiness through the hard work of where it begins, and it's always with us, with how we're loving ourselves. So wrap yourself up in this Taurus energy that so very much wants warm drinks and warm blankets and a warm hug, and start seeing yourself and each other from a more compassionate place, and then build from there. Let's rebuild. I hope you have a beautiful week.